Hello! This is going to be a series of lessons on how to use TinkerCAD, which is the program we use to print 3D items. We're going to start with these 9 basic skills that you'll be able to use in your designing and planning for your own projects. So all of this is posted in your canvas. And I'm assuming that you're using a 2-button scroll wheel mouse, a 2-button scroll wheel mouse, because it'll make things a lot easier. And it's how most of these kind of CAD programs are used. So if you don't have one, go and get one from the end of the computer carts, because it'll be very frustrating if you don't have one. Also in Canvas is this sheet that has shortcuts for how to use um, TinkerCAD, and I have extra copies that you can use those, and you can keep it with you. You can always refer back to it. So let's get started, and we'll launch a new TinkerCAD. The address is www.tinkercad.com. So you're going to click on Sign In. Don't click on Join Now. And you want to use Sign In with Google, not students join a class. There are no classes, so sign in with Google. Now, you won't have any of these projects here until you get started. So they'll all end up there, but click Create a New Design. So now that you've opened this, we want to rename the file. The TinkerCAD will automatically give it a name, but we want it to make it something that you would understand what it might be. So you would just change it. When you hover over that, it says Change Name. Click on that, and then type in whatever this is going to be. It could be practice. It could be something that you're designing. Having your name in there is not a bad idea, but I'm not going to do that at this point. So now you've renamed your file. You just click on that, click off of it, it'll save it. Now we want to use learn how to use the mouse. So if I right click on the button and drag, it's going to so this left mouse click is going to select whatever you have on this. Right now we don't have anything on it. If you do a right mouse click, it's going to change the position of the view on your work plane. The scroll wheel, the little wheel zooms in and out. Now, if you push on the scroll wheel, oh, right here, there you go. Now it's going to pan. So left, right, up, down. So you can, it's kind of a button. And so that helps you move things around like that. So review, left mouse click select, right mouse click orbits around, and the scroll wheel will move it around. But if you click on it, it'll allow you to pan the whole sheet around so you can see what's going on. So let's take a look at some basic shapes. Underneath here, you can see a whole bunch of other things. You can look at text and numbers. There's characters, so different drawings of things. There's connections, connectors you can attach to other things. You've got some shape generators, which we'll do later. This printables is not something we really work on right now, and it wouldn't really help us for what we're trying to do right now. And they're often made by other people. But we're going to use mostly basic shapes for this task today. So as you're making things, if you're finding that you're using some shapes and things more often, you can make them favorites. Instead of having to go back up and selecting and all of this, going back to the main menu. So you can click on that star, and that's just made it a favorite, and then maybe another one that you want to add. There's another favorite, and there's another one. And then you can go back to that menu, and down there you can click on favorites, and all those things that you use more often are there. If you decide you don't want it anymore, you can just unclick it, and it disappears from your favorite list. So that's a kind of a handy tool to have. Okay, so let's go back to basic shapes. We're going to take an object, we'll take this box, and we're going to drag it out to the work plane. So we're going to left click and just place it on the work plane and let it go. So now that our object's on the work plane, we get these shape properties, and this menu opens up. So I can click on that, and I can change the radius. And let me click and zoom in. But you can see that it'll change how angular or strong the edges are. So that's a strong edge, and it's rounding it off when we go to the other side. Steps is a little hard to see on this image, but it'll show how like smooth the edges are. So the smoother the edges are, the less steps in each of the drawings, each of the objects. For length, I can increase the length, I can increase the width, and I increase the height. And all of these changes are occurring in the center, from the center of my object. And as it moves out from the center, it goes equally in either direction. Okay, let's click and drag this out of the way. And now we're going to bring in a new object. We'll grab this shape over here and drop it on the. Now, because it's a different shape, it's going to give us different attributes. So a rectangle will have those attributes, and this shape has these attributes. So, and you can play with this too. I mean, you can increase the shape, the size of the shape. You can go all the way down to a three-sided. You can go to the beveling, which is kind of rounding that out. So you zoom in and take a look at that. And then segments again helps to do some rounding. But it's important when you're looking at different shapes that you actually pay attention to what's going on in this menu, because there's a lot of different things you can do with some of these, and it will give you a very different effect depending on what you're trying to do. Okay, let's talk about locking and unlocking with this shape that's already been selected. So if I really like this and I don't want it to change again, especially when I'm doing other maneuvers or other design parts, I can lock it so it doesn't get changed at all. And so make sure it's selected, and then up in the top, in the attribute box there with the different shapes, you can go up there and click that little padlock, and it'll lock it. So now, no matter what I do, it will not change. I can always unlock it if I need to, but it won't change until I do. In locking it, it also puts it in that space, and you cannot move it. And so one thing you could do is, instead of locking it on this plane, this work plane, just drag it off the work plane and then lock it over there. It's not in your workspace, but it won't get moved, and it won't get deleted, and it won't get messed with until you're ready to put it back in there. Okay, what's next? Oh yeah, see, I've unlocked it, and now I can mess with it on the side. Change the shape, move it back in, and so forth. All right, we're going to talk about hiding and unhiding. So if I click this little icon here, hide, once I have something selected, I click that, then I can hide it, and it disappears. It's not gone, it's just there, but then I click that little icon again that's now on the bar, then it unhides. And this can be handy if you're trying to work on two different shapes and one is in the way. You can hide the one, work on the shape, and then unhide it so that you now have your whole part, all your pieces together. All right, next topic, copying, pasting, and deleting. Okay, for deleting, a couple different ways you can do it. You can highlight the object and then click the garbage can up in the top. You can click on the object and type the delete key on your keyboard, and that'll take care of it. Or you can do the left mouse select, drag it, and then do either one. The delete key would work too. And if you made a mistake and you didn't want to delete that, you certainly can do the undo. But if you wanted to redo, you can click the other one and redo it, and you can go back and forth depending on what you want to do. And you can use that undo for multiple times to go all the way back into what you've been working on to get back to a spot where you needed to get back. And you can continue to use those keys however it suits you. So if you wanted to delete multiple objects, you can do the click and drag and then hit your delete key, and that will it highlights both of them. If I had another object that was really close by and I wanted to delete only the gray and the blue part, but I touch even a little bit of the red, it's going to select them all, and I'll end up deleting them all. So another way to do this is to, on your keyboard, hit the Shift key. So I hold the Shift key down, I click the gray cone, and then I can click the blue cone, and it only will then delete those two objects, and I can leave the red block alone. Now let's say I wanted to duplicate. Well, I could select the object and I can click the copy button and then the paste button. Copy and then paste. Or I can click the duplicate button. And if I click that, I've made a copy of that object. But where is it? Well, they're exactly on top of each other. So I can click and drag the one off the other. So if I wanted more than that, I can select them both, duplicate, and now I've got two of them again, and I can continue to do this as many times as I need to duplicate as many as I need. Oh, I'll just toss those. Okay, so let's clean this up a little bit. I think I will I'll just delete that one, and I'll move that one aside, and so now we have these three objects we can continue with. So while we're here, we can, if this is in the way, you can click that little triangle there and click it back to get it. You can also move that side menu out of the way too with that little arrow. So give yourself some room. Okay, let's talk about let's talk about what all these buttons over here mean. So while you're working on a project, you might get too zoomed in or off the page and you're not quite sure where you are. And so you can go over there, the little home button, and click that, and it'll pull you right back so you can see everything on your work plane. So let's say I just wanted to work with one of these shapes here. And we can just easily scroll in with our mouse and get into that area, or you can go to the left side and click on what's called Fit to View. We'll work on that gray one. So Fit to View, if you click that, I've got the object selected. It will move that object to be front and center. So you can work on that, or I can click something else like the red box, and now I'm right with that one. And I can work on that, or the blue box too. So you can use the plus and minus as a way to zoom in and out, or you can still use a scroll wheel, which is a little easier. And then back to home. So up here is called the view cube. And if I wanted to get, we're gonna zoom in on the blue cube. If I clicked front, it will position it so I'm looking at the front. Or if I go to the other one of the sides, it would say the right side. Or I can go back to front, I can click and see the left side, top, and then also a couple turns I can see from underneath. So this will help you orient yourself where you want to view. Most students will just use the mouse and move it around and scroll around how you want to get there, but sometimes it's nice to just get where you wanted to start or use that view cube to get to a spot exactly, top, bottom, and so forth, and you can use it that way, whatever seems to work best for you. Certainly play around with it to see if it's a tool that's useful for you. Okay, let's talk about moving objects now. Okay, we're going to click on Home. And let's clean this up and just delete everything here. And let's grab another shape. How about a cone? We'll put that right there. So we're going to talk about how to move objects around on this work plane. So one way is to just simply click and drag this object around and move it about the plane. And when I do that, notice that you get these arrows here. And these are telling you just how far away on the grid you have moved this object away from its original spot. And if you're really good, you could probably get this back to 0, 0, but I'm not going to spend that time doing that. That's not what I really want to do. So if you really did want to get it back to that 0, 0 spot, you could go up there and click the undo. Or you can change those numbers to 0 and 0, and it would put it right back exactly in the same spot you started. One problem with just dragging something around is you might grab one of these corner square contact points and end up changing their shape. And that could be really frustrating, and you're not actually doing what you want it to do. Always hit that undo button, but there's another way. If you are free dragging it around, just make sure you click it on the center so you're not grabbing one of those contact points. So another way to do that is to just actually use your arrow keys on your keyboard. So I can use my left arrow key. You got to make sure you select the object in the center. And then I use my left arrow key to move it over, and I can move my right arrow key and my up arrow key and my down arrow key. Now the up key moves it away and the down key moves it towards you. Now if you wanted to move something more rapidly, you can push down the shift key and the arrow keys, and it'll make bigger jumps across your work plane. That can be handy. So another reason to use the arrow keys is, let's say, okay, I'm going to duplicate this cone, and I'm going to move it aside. So I'm going to drag it. If I click and drag it over, I can move it rapidly. But if I wanted to put it exactly back in its place, dragging it is going to be really hard to get it exactly in the same spot. And it may look like the same spot, but it may not be the same spot. So that can be tricky and ruin your design. But if I use the arrow keys, I know that it's always going to travel in a straight line, and I can get them to be exactly in the same spot back where they were. I could also use the undo key. So really helps keeping things in some nice straight lines using the arrow keys and the grid system. You can also move objects up and down, but this time you're going to click on the control key. Oh, still moving it around there. Okay, if I click on the control key and with the arrows, I can then use the up arrow to move my object up off the plane, and I can use the down arrow to bring it back down to the plane. You also can move the object up and down is if you grab that little, I don't know, triangle-y carrot kind of thing. If I hover my mouse over it, it'll turn red. And if I click on that, I can then use my scroll, my mouse, to drag it up and drag it down. And actually, if you notice, I can put it below the plane if I need to. That really helps sometimes to embed objects. So that's just the basics of how to move things left, right, up, down. Oh, going back to home. So I think that's about it for these 9 skills that'll get you started. Um, so I've got a task for you after this, and I will have that posted in Canvas and talk to you in person about it. Happy designing!